moment to look at the future development of Europe. A new age is dawning. We need endurance, but the European way of life is worth it. Freedom has no price. The price of freedom is something you pay when you lose it. And Ukrainians are demonstrating that today. And we stand with you, Ukraine.
Thank you, President Weber. I now give the floor on behalf of the S&D Group to Irache Garcia Perez. Gracias, Presidenta.
Thank you, President. Putin's war against Ukraine marks the beginning of a new stage in decisions. Financial and military support to Ukraine, the International Protection Directive to assist Ukrainian refugees, and leap in our capacity to respond. Western democracies have achieved to maintain our unity, given the serious challenges that we will continue to have to face. Are the first step in a long crisis that will raise new dilemmas, for example, Russian reprisals. Unity requires courage and sacrifice. It's only we need to defeat Putin. Our utter gas for the short term. We also need courage and sacrifice to welcome all the refugees who are fleeing war. We need shared responsibility there. The cowardly attack of Putin shows his real fear, which is democracy. A successful democratic transition in Ukraine needs to serve as an inspiration to those who bravely have taken to the streets in Russia. The fight for peace and freedom of the Russian and Ukrainian peoples require our support. We cannot rest until Putin is judged as a war criminal by the International Criminal Court. Putin's attack will also reveal his accomplices, the media, and denies individual rights. Currently in the cities and towns of Ukraine, it's not only their security and territorial integrity that's at stake. On international law, diplomacy and human rights, or it can be a different world based on brute force, spheres of influence, and violations of rights that should be universal. Make us renounce our desire to forge alliances that are based on the integrity of our borders. History is never wrong. We can't leave Ukrainians alone, as the Spanish felt during the first half of the 20th century in the fight between fascism and democracy. The resistance of the heroic Ukrainian people will be the triumph of Western democracies. And let me just conclude with a personal comment. I'm proud of Europe, the Europe of today, the Europe that does not resign itself, looks forward to defend what we hold most precious, democracy and peace. Thank you.
I now give the floor on
Merci, Madame la Représentante, chers collègues.
Hi, Representative.
Je souhaite commencer par saluer le courage des hommes et des femmes ukrainiennes et ukrainiens qui se battent non seulement pour leur patrie, mais pour leur droit à choisir leur destin.
President Zelensky and the President of the Ukrainian Parliament,
Ces derniers jours, l'Europe a montré qu'elle était le meilleur allié du peuple ukrainien.
The European Parliament today has shown it is a strong ally of the Ukrainian people. Europe is a shield that protects its democracy and freedoms for all the peoples of Europe. Of all the decisions taken this week, let me just say you have the absolute support of our political group. There is huge work that has been done by the European institutions in order to put in place and make operational these sanctions and support measures for Ukraine. Alone or divided, I can't even imagine what Putin would have done to our continent. You have been up to this historic challenge.
Let me go even further. When it comes to support measures for Ukraine, I believe giving the candidate status to Ukraine is important. Now, of course, it will take some time for the Ukraine to join the EU. There'll be a rigorous process, but I think it's important that we acknowledge that the Ukrainians are fighting for democracy. They are already part of our community. I think the status of candidate country would be a fair acknowledgement for this. We expect to see strong sanctions to really dry up all of the financial resources for Putin in this war. Technological embargoes, gas, oil, against the oligarchs as well, an end to the golden passports and residence rights, as you have mentioned, Madam President. All of these sanctions must be activated as soon as possible. We hope that this will not hit the Russian people too hard, as we know who are majoritarily opposed to this war. We need to welcome the Russian opposition here in this hemicycle as well. Now, these measures will have a cost for our economy, so we need to neutralise costs at a European level for the countries and companies who are hardest hit by this. Let me conclude with one final point, Mr. President, Madam President, to say that there is still some work to be done for Europe to guarantee its solidarity as shown by this crisis. French budget at national and European levels, as well as an energy autonomy strategy as well. Colleagues, the protection of our European model comes at a cost. My political group believes that our freedoms are a fundamental value. We are willing to assume that cost when it comes to sanctions or investment in tools of European sovereignty. We understand sacrifices of the European people and also the sacrifices of millions of Europeans before us who have made this the freest continent in the world.
Philip Lamberts.
Praise your courage and determination to defend your freedom. Your resistance is a wake-up call to all democrats around the world. Without the will to fight, democracy will perish. To your aggressor, I say, your lies for justifying war cannot and will not remain unchallenged. No, Mr. Putin, Ukraine is not ruled by Nazis, as blooded in the Holocaust. No, Mr. Putin, there's no genocide you yourself started 8 years ago, which took already 14,000 lives, and that your invasion brings only to a new level. No, Mr. Putin, you voluntarily those it inherited in 1991 from the Soviet Union in exchange for its territorial integrity, which you have been trampling on ever since you annexed Crimea in 2014. No, Mr. Putin, there was no perspective for Ukraine to join NATO in the foreseeable future. And if there is such an aspiration in Ukraine, as there was in so many nations once subjugated by the Soviet Union, your aggression against Ukraine explains why. No, Mr. Putin, the NATO member states have no intention to deny the Russian people's right to peace and security. It is your reckless actions that imperil those legitimate aspirations. The reality for rule of law, for peace. And that choice, made by a people so close to Russia as by history and geography, was never a threat to Russia's security, but to the very existence of your authoritarian at the cost of precious human lives and livelihoods, both Ukrainian and Russian. The reality, Mr. Putin, is that your brutal to deny their very existence as a people, your aggression in cementing the existence of the European Union. We know that the war on Ukraine is more than just an aggression against a sovereign state. It is a direct challenge to the values that lie at the foundation of our union. Ever since it was started, the European project was and remains a peace project, so that the rule of brute force be replaced by the rule of law, so that democracy, dialogue, compromise and cooperation across national borders provide the best basis for shared and sustainable prosperity. We Europeans cannot stand by idle when a partner country is invaded and when our fundamental values are challenged in such a brutal way. This is why, short of direct military intervention, which would be foolish, we must and we will provide the Ukrainian people with all the support we can in order to face the aggression. This is why we must and we will provide safe haven without any discrimination to all those who are fleeing the war to seek refuge on our territory. This is why we must and we will mobilize all political, economic and financial means at our disposal to exert maximal pressure on Putin's Russia in order to make him stop his aggression. And let me be clear to the people of Russia, we have no quarrel with you. You too have the right to live in dignity, and many of you are standing up daily to defend it at great personal risk. We know that resuming the diplomatic dialogue with your country is the only path to a sustainable peace on our continent, but this can only happen if the aggression stops. As for us Europeans, meeting the challenge put to us by Putin's war will test our strength, our determination, and above all, our unity. It will not come cheap. Therefore, it will force us to make hard choices. The first must be for cohesion within and across member states. The global financial crisis, the Eurozone crisis and the pandemic have deepened social and economic injustice in our union. It cannot be that once again the brunt of the massive efforts required to counter Putin's war will be carried by the weakest shoulders. Should that be the case, the legitimate resentment would sap the very basis of our social contract as well as those of our union. And this would fulfill one of Putin's unset goals, dividing us. The second must be for energy independence. Indeed, our massive dependence on Russia for raw materials and energy is a primary reason for Europe's lack of determination to deter the Russian regime up until now. No surprise, when 40% of our gas, 30% of our coal, of our oil and of our nuclear fuels, don't forget that, is provided by Russia. As the EU is almost devoid of these resources, is our plan really to replace this massive dependence from Russia with another equally massive dependence from anyone else? We say that energy independence is the key for the EU to become a respected geopolitical player, and that will never be achieved by putting gas and nuclear at the heart of our energy strategy. As the President said, only renewables and energy efficiency can give us the strategic autonomy we seek. It is not just for the climate that we must accelerate the energy transition. It is for our security and for the resilience of our economies. Dear colleagues, never before has the European Union been challenged in such a direct and brutal way. I have no doubt that we collectively, and only collectively, have the strength, the resources, the determination, and above all, the wisdom to meet this challenge together with Ukraine, because we belong together. Thank you.
Thank you. I give the floor now to Marco Zanni on behalf of the ID Group.
Grazie mille, Presidente della
Commissione
Europea,
President of the European Commission, President of the Council, High Representative. The cowardly attack of the Russian regime is showing Europe once again the ugliest images of its history, as was recalled by President von der Leyen 30 years since the war in the Balkans. Once again in 2022, we're talking about a war in Europe. Our support and our extraordinary admiration goes to the Ukrainian people, these people who are tenaciously defending their freedom and their sovereignty when faced with an unanimous criticism of the attack. And it's great to see that perhaps for the first time European Union institutions have firmly and rapidly packaged that has been launched And in terms of size, length and impact, it is unequalled in European history. The approach and the unity with which the European institutions have moved are unprecedented. Support for the Ukrainian people needs to be total, and we need to ensure that we have peace as soon as possible, a peace which restores the territorial integrity of Ukraine. But at the same time, as some of you have recalled, we also need to look at the fact that the 24th of February has changed our history. There's going to be a before the 24th of February and an after the 24th of February. And we have to look at what our errors and mistakes have been in the past, what has led to us being unprepared for a post-February the 24th period. Russia isn't the only authoritarian regime that is threatening the global order, and that's something we need to note. So let's try and look at these errors that we've made. We several times mentioned our dependence on Russia in terms of energy, gas, oil, raw materials. And they're also a market for our goods. But this dependency was our political choice. We chose not to use our own energy resources and to buy them from Russia or elsewhere instead. Europe is not a country, well, an area, that is poor in energy resources. That's something we've chosen to be. And let me give you an example. In the 1990s in Italy, we were producing 20 billion cubic meters of gas a year. Today we produce 3, not because gas in Italy has run out, but because we've decided not to use it. And on sanctions, as we've said, this package is unprecedented. But we have to be clear, it's going to have an impact on our economy as well. And let me take up what our colleague Mr. Lamberts has said. We've had 2 years of pandemic, we've had an unprecedented economic crisis, and we can't have the consequences of these sanctions weighing on our businesses and on our citizens. So I hope that the Commission will act quickly once again to ensure that this doesn't happen, to ensure that our businesses and our citizens receive the appropriate support. Let me conclude just with a couple of comments. Firstly, what we've seen happen with Russia needs to be a lesson for the future. There's another non-liberal regime that's threatening the West, and that is China. Let's not make the same mistakes with China that we made with Russia. Let's reduce Europe's dependency on China. That is crucial. My second point is more personal in nature, and with this I will conclude. These are times of history in which politicians are split between the great and the less great. In my country we say men and small men. And once again I note that unfortunately at this time some people in this Parliament wanted to see themselves recalled as small men. They prevented my political group from fully supporting the resolution that we're going to be voting on. And this is something that is a small gesture that doesn't damage my political group, doesn't damage others. I think it damages this institution, which could have assumed a unanimous position. Thank you.
I give the floor next on behalf of the ECR group to Mr. Legutko.
Madam President, the war created an entirely new situation, and we have to do everything we can to win this war because it's our war, the war of all European nations. Once Putin decided to go ahead with the invasion, it became clear he is determined to subdue Ukraine and will not hesitate to resort to the extreme measures. It was he who once said, let me remind you, that the collapse of the Soviet Union had been the greatest geopolitical tragedy of the century. So there should be no misunderstanding as to his intentions. He plans to create what was once the Soviet Empire, perhaps not with one stroke, but that is definitely his final objective. Moreover, he has been more or less open about it all along. The Ukrainian army and the Ukrainian people are opposing the invaders, and they desperately need some military backup arms and other tools of defense. Fortunately, after the initial opposition from some countries, nowadays it is about 20 governments, I think, that started helping the Ukrainians. And it's very good that some time ago in the Council, the member states decided to create European Peace Facility and that these funds can be now used to help Ukraine. And I'm proud to say that it is my government that was first to propose as early as Thursday morning to activate European Peace Facility. So the flow of arms, the flow of necessary technology and other means of defense must continue. Whatever the effects of the sanctions, who will win the war will be ultimately decided on the battlefield. And finally, I must say this. I'm sorry, I must say this, because as usual, the EU is, with its narcissistic and self-congratulatory proclivities, likes to escape responsibility. Putin made his decision because he was induced by the weakness of the West. Let us be frank. He did not think much of the Western leaders, and it showed. He didn't hide it. And in a way, he was right, having been for a long time pampered by the French and German governments, by some American administrations, also by the European Commission that was both unable and unwilling to stymie the Nord Stream projects. To those Western leaders and governments that took upon themselves the job of dealing with Russia, particularly to the German politicians, but not only to them, we must say today, ladies and gentlemen, you blew it, and your leadership credibility is gone. It's time for a reset, and let us start by enabling Ukraine to join the European Union.
I give the floor next to Manon Aubry on behalf of the Left Group.
Madame la Présidente,
War has come back to Europe. I am part of the generation that was born after the Cold War that did not know this clash of the ghosts of the past are coming back to haunt us. War is back. And let me say very clearly, Vladimir Putin is entirely responsible, firmly condemns the unacceptable military Russian aggression against Ukraine and would like to highlight the heroic resistance of the Ukrainians and their presidents in the face of this invasion. The tanks are in the underground or on the road to exile, and it's
those people I'd like to think of first and foremost. The Ukrainians need to know that we are not going to abandon them. Thank you for taking the time today to speak to our parliament. Democracy and freedom, those things that his people are fighting for, these are our values too. And humanitarian assistance without any conditions, meaning taking refugees without any distinctions of the colour of skins, with no with no arguments. The humanitarian crisis is brutality where the strongest prevail. And I say this very seriously. Colleagues, President von der Leyen, to become part of this terrible game and for Europe to become a battlefield. I warn you, colleagues, against becoming involved in military. As Jean Jaurès rightly said, you cannot wage war to end war. The European Union must, however, defend at any cost. The targeted sanctions have been taken, but for some of them, how will they be truly applied when there is still impunity for tax havens which hide the wealth of Russian tax evasion and criminality at an international level? We should be clear, these economic sanctions can only last so long. The people will feel the consequences through price rises that will have to be compensated. We all know that the only really sustainable option is diplomacy. All of our efforts have to be focused on obtaining a ceasefire and seeing the withdrawal of Russian troops. The path to peace is difficult, but it is the only reasonable path we have. NATO, a military alliance, a legacy of the Cold War, is not the solution. NATO does not judge on world peace. That is the United Nations. The place to discuss the security of the continent is not NATO, it's the OSCE. The Ukrainian president has talked about ways to move forward. For example, a statute of neutrality protected by the United Nations. We should support this possibility. I don't want to lie to the citizens. There is no miracle solution. But I do have a very firm conviction. What we need to do to counter Putin is not to enter into a vicious cycle of eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. What we need to see is the mobilization of people for peace. In Russia, at Rostov-sur-le-Don, there was a young woman who was imprisoned for 8 days simply for standing in the street with a placard. And that is a symbol for the mobilization that Putin wants to try and make invisible. She symbolizes the courage of thousands of Russians who are defying the fierce repression of Putin. There are hundreds of thousands of Europeans who've taken the Ukrainian flag and gone into the streets to call for peace, peace at any cost. And let me end with the words from Albert Camus on the 8th of August 1945, just after the bombing of Hiroshima. Looking at these terrifying perspectives for humanity, we see now that peace is the only fight that is really worth fighting for. It is more than a prayer. This is a call from the people to their governments. It is a choice between hell and between reason. Thank you very much.
Next, on behalf of the non-attached members, to Kinga Gál.
Until last night, more than 90,000 refugees arrived to history, and we are trying to help everybody who wants to come to Hungary. Everybody is welcome, everybody will be helped, irrespective of which part of the Ukraine they are coming from and irrespective of their ethnicity. The aggression, we fully condemn the military aggression against Ukraine and the sovereignty of Ukraine. We are in favor of united European action, and we also are in favor of, we support all common sanctions, common decisions. Also the European Peace Facility should be activated. We must not let ourselves be drawn into this tragic war just on the other side of the border. Then in peace times, we must pay attention to the security of the ethnic Hungarian community in Transcarpathia. We need calm, we need wisdom, and we need the two-party neighborhood. And we must help Ukraine in any way we can. Thank you.
Danke, Frau Kollegin.
Thank you very much. Now the next speaker is Mrs. Juncker-Chetena.
Ukraine signed in their blood the EU membership. I was too weak to convince my friends in the West in time. It is not our NATO or EU memberships, but not being invited in joining NATO and the EU. But today there are no more Eastern or Western Europeans. There is only our joint responsibility for the European continent. I want to turn to the Russians. I understand that you yourselves are imprisoned and the Ukrainians are dying for you also, for a free Russia. Some human being in the Kremlin must act too, to isolate this war criminal with a nuclear button in his hands. Those maps who went to the occupied Crimea must now go to Putin and stop him. Ukrainian blood binds. When that end will come, I cannot tell you. I only know that we must do all that is in our power to bring it closer. Thank you, Ukraine. Slava Ukraini.
Danke, Frau Kollegin. Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Pedro Marques, you have the floor.
Muito obrigado, Presidente, Presidente da Comissão.
Thank you very much, Vice President, Madam President,
uma agressão bárbara a um Estado
and High
livre e
Representative.
uma Europa que se une
Barbaric
contra o regresso
aggression
do mundo
against
à Guerra
a
Fria.
free country
Uma
in
guerra que
Europe.
já não é apenas uma
And of course,
miragem.
we're all
Há um povo
united.
que sofre
It
e um
reminds us
mundo
of
que
the
muda.
Cold War.
Sim,
This
armamos a
war
Ucrânia. Sim,
is not an
infligimos
illusion.
sanções sem paralelo a
People is
Putin
suffering.
e aos
Yes,
oligarcas.
for the Ukraine, we have
Isolamos a
to
Rússia de
have
Putin do mundo livre.
unprecedented sanctions against Russia and his oligarchs.
E o exemplo dos
We
milhares
have
que
to
Putin
liberate
prendeu por
Ukraine
gritarem
from
pelo fim da
Putin.
guerra.
And we
Se
also
hoje
have to
somos
see
menos
that
livres devido a
Putin
esta guerra,
is
lutaremos com
trying
mais força
to
pela
kill
ambição do
people
sonho
if
europeu
we
da liberdade.
don't react today.
Apoiaremos a Ucrânia.
Then we won't
Enfrentaremos a crise
have
energética,
the
seremos finalmente
possibility
solidários com os
of
refugiados todos e
remaining
afirmaremos
united
sem mais
as a
demoras
union.
a
We
autonomia
have
da
to
Europa
work
no mundo.
and
Seremos mais
express our
fortes e unidos
solidarity
da crise
and
que nos queria
maintain
dividir.
our autonomy in the world.
Sonhamos
And
com o
we
regresso à
have
paz
to
para os nossos filhos,
leave this
para os
crisis
filhos da
unified.
brava Ucrânia.
We have
Slava Ucrânia.
to do this for the children and do this for the children of the brave and courageous Ukrainians. Thank you very much. Mr. Autravicius is next.
Mr. Chair, Madam President, High Commissioner, dear colleagues, dear Ukrainians, today we are back to 28 in the European Union again. Ukraine has emerged as a great member of the European family. Ukraine is bravely fighting for European values and freedom for Europeans. Let us give Ukraine its due, providing a candidate status now and then accepting it in the European Union. Every day that passes makes things worse for Ukraine, and we cannot allow it. Today, the future and the fate of Europe is at stake in Ukraine. Russia's treacherous operation only confirms the Putin's regime's choice to draw new red lines on the face of Europe. War criminal, and has brought the Belarusian dictator Lukashenko with him. Are already condemned and soon to be convicted. Let us give Ukraine a weapon with which it can defend itself against the aggressor. It's our duty. And let us provide humanitarian aid to its people who are suffering from the crimes of its aggressor. The support must be such that the West can look Ukraine in the eye. Let us isolate Russia, the full political, economic and cultural blockade. Keep Russia down, Kremlin cronies out, and the Russian people close. Ukraine's victory is our victory. Slava Ukraini!
Unser nächster Redner ist Herr Sergej Lagodinsky. Mr. Sergej Lagodinsky.
Slava Ukraini! We did not ask for this confrontation. Ukrainians did not ask for this confrontation. Ukrainians didn't spread hate. Ukrainians didn't dream of empires. Ukrainians did not dictate their neighbors what policies to follow and which alliances to join. Ukrainians did not occupy, did not annex, and did not blackmail. Those actions came from Moscow. And my heart is bleeding when I say those words. But Ukrainians, all they want is to live a free life in a free country. This is not much to ask, but this is a lot to defend. And this is why it is our European moral imperative to help Ukrainians with refuge and money, but yes, also with military equipment, to help them defend their own choice, to help them save their children, their families, their loved ones, the loved ones who take arms and walk to battles, help them to return. And yes, this is why we have no other options than to put a clear alternative in front of President Putin. Either you stop this war now, or you will have to bear the consequences that will be devastating. We did not ask for this confrontation. You did.
Mr. Kofod, next speaker. Thank you very much, Vice President. Russia has to be hit by the hardest sanctions. We have to send weapons to Ukraine. We have to send money. We have to send humanitarian aid. And we have to receive those poor people who are forced to flee Ukraine, who are now arriving in our home. We have to say no to Putin's regime, and we have to demonstrate that the aggression that Putin has demonstrated towards a peaceful neighbor is unacceptable, that this action we will respond with serious consequences, and the Kremlin's terror will never be tolerated by the free world. The free world can only be on the side of Ukraine. I love Europe because of its diversity. And Ukraine is part of Europe. The people who are fleeing from Ukraine, they are Europeans, and they are part of our European family. The Ukrainians are being attacked by Putin, and so therefore we should demonstrate our friendship and help. Dictatorship can never succeed, and Putin will never have enough. Right now, it's impacting Ukraine. In the future, it could be affecting other European countries. We have to say stop. We have to stand up, and we have to be alert and ensure every country's right to determine on its own destiny. We have to be prepared to defend ourselves against any tyrant who will attack us with terror and war. We need strength in NATO, and we need larger defense budgets. I support this resolution. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. After the cleaning is Mr. Fitta.
Grazie Presidente, Presidente della Commissione.
Thank you, President,
Una
President of the Commission.
sta colpendo il nostro continente.
An unacceptable
Quello
tragedy.
che sta accadendo sotto i nostri
What's
occhi a
happening in
pochi
our
chilometri dai
continent,
nostri
in front of
confini,
our eyes,
è
just
un
a few
attacco
kilometers away from our
condotto dalla
borders,
Federazione
is
Russa
an
a tutto
attack being
campo
carried
contro
out
la
from the Russian
sovranità e l'integrità
Federation
territoriale di un paese democratico.
on the territorial
Le immagini che ci
integrity and
giungono
sovereignty
dall'Ucraina
of a democratic
testimoniano non
country. The
solo un
images
attacco
that come from
ingiustificato
Ukraine
e
show
indiscriminato, ma la
that the
palese
attack is
violazione
indiscriminate
di
and
tutte le regole del
unacceptable,
diritto
but
internazionale,
also
comprese quelle che
show
regolano
clear
i conflitti.
violations of
Bisogna
international
reagire.
law. We need to act to put an end to these actions which are aimed at women and children, civilian populations. This is not war, this is barbaric, and those who are responsible need to be judged for their actions. These are barbaric actions against the Ukrainian people. We salute their bravery and their resilience. I think it's important today to emphasize that the actions and role of the countries on Ukraine's western border are crucial. They're carrying out very important humanitarian work. We need to work together with NATO and other countries across the globe in order to defend the values of freedom and democracy. And it's because of that that the European Union and the West, who have made mistakes in the past, need to stand firm, and together today our group fully supports the sanctions and any actions that will strike at Moscow's military and economic power. We want to see Moscow forced to end this shameful conflict in Ukraine. We also need to be aware that in preserving political unity, we need to work hard to ensure that public opinion is with us, and the people of Europe are going to suffer, given that this is coming on top of the pandemic and economic crisis. So we need a fund to provide funds to citizens who are struck by these sanctions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Mrs. Villanueva Ruiz.
Gracias, Presidenta.
Thank you very much, President. Let me say that we firmly condemn the invasion by Putin, and we want to show maximum solidarity to the victims in Ukraine in these very difficult times. It's also important to remember that today there are extreme right groups in this chamber who are allies of Putin and who have helped finance and work for the destabilization of Europe, and this is not something we can continue to hide. Europe needs to act firmly and with the objective of building human lives. This conflict cannot be used to further other interests. We need to foster spaces of international dialogue. We need to use all the tools we have at our disposal to promote that dialogue. We know that that is the only way to end this terrible tragedy. Let us not repeat old errors and see military escalation, which will lead to years of pain. This is the moment to be involved in politics and show that Europe is up to this challenge. Peace is the only objective. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Frau Kollegin.
Thank you much indeed. Now I'll give the floor to Mr. Castaldo.
Thank you, Chair. Today, we are not simply condemning an unjustifiable aggression. Today, we stand up united in this House to face the criminal invasion of an authoritarian regime against international law, our principles, our values, therefore against all of us. Putin's cynical bet assumes he would quickly overthrow the Ukrainian democracy with his divisions on the ground, but also brings other divisions, no less dangerous, through propaganda and fear within our countries among our peoples. Our bond and duty is to make sure that it will fail, with our resolute support to the heroic resistance in Ukraine and its official recognition as EU candidates, and with the immediate adoption of a new solidarity package based on common European bonds. We must immediately support also our companies and families who will suffer the dire consequences of the dutiful sets of sanctions aimed at bringing Moscow to the negotiating table. This is not the war of all the Russians. This is a crime perpetrated by a tyrant and his accomplices. Thousands of citizens are bravely taking to the streets to shout their clear no, risking their lives to oppose his imperialistic ravings. They deserve our full support. This existential threat is a crucial moment in our history and calls for exceptional efforts if we really want to protect peace, democracy and our common destiny. Sometimes it takes courage to grow up and become who we really are. Slava Europa, Slava Ukraina.
Unser nächster Redner ist
Thank you much indeed. Mr. Gala, please.
Frau Präsidentin, liebe Kolleginnen und Kollegen, szanowni ukraińscy Drudzy,
Slava Ukraini.
Was sich hier vor unseren Augen abspielt, ist
What's
Krieg in
happening
Europa in
is
Echtzeit.
war in Europe in real
Unermessliches
time.
Leid unschuldiger Menschen
Suffering
ist die größte
innocent people
Katastrophe für die
is the
Ukraine
biggest
seit
catastrophe
dem
for
deutschen Einmarsch 1941.
Ukraine since
Und es
1941 when
und
Germany
ausschließlich in
invaded.
Verantwortung
And the only
eines
responsible
zynischen,
is a
ständig lügenden und
cynical,
menschenverachtenden russischen Diktators,
lying
der die Existenz der
dictator
Ukraine als demokratischer,
who
unabhängiger Staat
rejects
beenden
the
und sie gegen den Willen
existence
der
of
Menschen
Ukraine as an
heim ins
independent
Reich holen
state
will.
and wants
Dieser
to bring his
Versuch
people
läuft
back
gerade
into the empire.
und dieser Versuch muss scheitern.
This must fail.
Als die Sowjetunion 1948 die Blockade Westberlins begann, die
1948,
Rote
beginning
Armee
of the
stand rundherum,
Berlin blockade.
da richtete der regierende Bürgermeister Ernst Reuter einen Appell an die
Ernst
Völker der
Reuter,
Welt. Heute
then Berlin mayor,
versucht
spoke
das
to the world and he
revisionistische
said,
Russland mit seinen
revisionist Russia
Invasionstruppen die
is trying
ukrainische
to
Hauptstadt einzukreisen und zu
do the
strangulieren
same thing now
und
in
die freien
Ukraine
Menschen dort in die sowjetische Knechtschaft zu führen.
to put
Und deshalb ist es
Ukrainian
angebracht, diesen
people
Appell zu wiederholen.
into
Ihr Völker
their
der
guardianship.
Welt, ihr Völker in Amerika,
Peoples
in
of the
Europa,
world, in
in der
America,
freien
in
Welt,
Europe, in the free
schaut
world,
auf diese Stadt und dieses
look
Land
at that
und
city,
erkennt,
look at
dass
that
ihr
country
dieses Land
and
und
understand
dieses Volk
that that
nicht
country, that
preisgeben
people
dürft, nicht preisgeben könnt.
cannot be left
Diesem Volk,
behind.
das die Revolution der Würde mit ukrainischen und Europafahnen bewirkt hat,
This
das gesagt
people
hat, wohin es schaut
and has said
und wohin es strebt,
where it
dem
wants to
müssen wir
be,
heute ein politisches
we
Signal
need to
geben,
give that people
dass sie
a
zu uns
political
gehören,
signal that they belong
dass
to
ihr
us,
Freiheitskampf nicht vergebens ist,
that their
dass das
fight for
böse,
freedom isn't
das
in vain,
gleichermaßen stalinistische
that
und
this
faschistische
evil, this
Putin-Regime nicht obsiegen
Stalinist,
wird.
fascist
Und dass es nach
Putin
dieser
regime
Prüfung,
will not
nach diesem
be
Kreuzweg,
victorious.
einem Wiederaufbau auf
And
einem Weg
after
in eine
all
gemeinsame
of this is over,
europäische
they can
Zukunft
start
geben wird.
reconstruction
Ich
on a
bitte
path
um
to
Zustimmung
Europe.
zu
So I would
unserer
ask for
Resolution.
your approval
Slava
of this
Ukraini.
resolution. Slava Ukraini.
Danke, Herr Gahler.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gala.
Wort ist Herr Tonino Piccola.
Next we have Mr. Piccola.
Hvala.
Thank you. Yes,
Agresija Rusije na Ukrajinu može
the
biti
aggression
uvod u
of
smjer
Russia against
čovječanstva,
Ukraine can be the
ali
beginning
novog
of the end of
pravednijeg
humankind,
međunarodnog poretka.
but it could also be the
Glavni
beginning
razlog za
of a
rat
new
je
world order.
autoritarna priroda
The main
režima
reason
pod
for the war is
apsolutizmom
the
ruskog
authoritarian
predsjednika.
rule of
Ne
Putin.
zna se što je gore,
Which is worse,
Putinova vojna agresija ili
Putin's
njegov
aggression
narativ kojim
or his
opravdava
narrative
nasilništvo.
justifying violence?
Putin je računao na pasivnost
Putin
Ukrajinaca
counted
i
on
podijeljenost
Ukraine's
Zapada.
passiveness and
Precijenio
the
je svoju
division of the
snagu,
West, but he
podcijenio snagu
overestimated
otpora
his strength
Ukrajinaca i
and
sposobnost Zapada da se
underestimated
ujedini.
the Ukrainian
Ovaj rat
resilience and the
izaziva
ability of
sjećanja
the
na
West
ratnu
to
agresiju
come
na
together.
moju zemlju,
This
Hrvatsku.
war reminds me of the
Prije 30
military
godina.
aggression against my
Napadi na
country,
dječje bolnice,
Croatia,
civilne objekte,
30 years
rušenje
ago,
gradova,
attacks
mnogo
on
izbjeglica.
children, civilian
Putin mora,
buildings,
kao i
destruction
Milošević,
and
odgovarati
refugees.
za svoje postupke
Just
pred
as
sudom
Milošević
za
did,
ratne
Putin
zločine.
must answer for his
Njemu će biti
actions
vrlo teško
before the
izaći
International
iz ovog
Criminal
rata.
Court.
Kremljinu bi
Putin
se
will find it
mogla
difficult
dogoditi
to come
ruska
out of this
verzija
war.
Majdana.
Kremlin
Povijest je
might
pokazala da se
experience the
diktatore
Russian
može
version
pobijediti,
of the Maidan.
ali jednako je
History
važno
has shown
otkloniti okolnosti
that
koje su dovele do
dictators can be
pojave
vanquished,
diktatora.
but it is equally
Ukrajina
important to
krvari,
eliminate the
ali
circumstances
Putinov režim
leading to
će
their rule.
iskrvariti.
Ukraine will
Živjela
bleed, but
Europska
Putin's
Ukrajina.
Russia will bleed
Slava
out.
Ukrajini.
Glory to Ukraine and Slava Ukraini.
Next we have Nathalie Loiseau.
Il a fallu une guerre.
It took a war.
Il a fallu une guerre sur le
It
sol
took a war
européen
on
pour que
European
l'Europe
soil
apprenne à
for
parler le
Europe to learn to
langage de la
speak the language of
puissance.
power.
Il a fallu
It
Vladimir
took
Poutine
Vladimir Putin
et sa guerre de trop
and his
pour
war
que
too
le lien
far
transatlantique
for
se
the
resserre,
transatlantic
que
ties
l'OTAN
to
se
retighten,
réveille et que la
NATO to
défense
wake up, and for
européenne
European
naisse
defence
enfin.
finally to emerge.
Mais il a surtout fallu
But it took
l'extraordinaire
above all
courage
the extraordinary
de
courage
Volodymyr
of
Zelensky
Vladimir
et du peuple
Zelensky
ukrainien
and the Ukrainian
pour que
people
nous nous sentions
for us
enfin
finally
obligés
to feel obliged
d'essayer
to
d'être à
try
la hauteur.
to rise to the occasion.
Ne nous leurrons pas.
Let's not
La
fool
crise sera
ourselves.
longue
The
et
crisis
elle
will be
sera
a
dure.
long one and it will be tough.
Nous allons devoir
We
tenir,
will have to hold strong,
assumer le
to pay
prix
the
de nos
price of our
décisions
decisions,
and above all to go further in strengthening our union. At the Maidan in 2014, it was the European flag that was flourished by the Ukrainians to call for the end of Moscow's dominion. Today, in shelters where they seek shelter from the bombs, the European flags can still be seen. We are the ones the Ukrainians are looking to. We must prove to the Ukrainians that they are right to believe in us. We must love Europe as much as they love it. Slava Ukraini.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you much indeed. Vice President Heidi Hautala, please.
Arvoisa puheenjohtaja, Venäjän hyökkäys Ukrainaa vastaan on saanut EUn viimein näyttämään sellaista yhtenäisyyttä ja globaalia johtajuutta, jota siltä on kauan odotettu.
That we have shown our unity and that we've shown global leadership. That's what we've needed. I think we've been able to show that our strength now has been brought to bear to support Ukraine. Sauli Niinistö, the Finnish president, said that the masks now have fallen. All we see now is the face of war. What we see now is a very difficult development that we've seen happening over many, many years. We'll need to therefore work as the EU, as member states, and help our neighbours. We can't, in Finland, in a non-aligned, frozen if you will, but now we're actually seeing possible that we might be in the same situation, that this happens to them. So we would line out to look for NATO. Thank you much indeed, Ms. Bardella.
Were underway more than ever that Vladimir Putin took an unacceptable people and country was violated. So solidarity with the people, the tragic lessons of history must not cloud our vision. We need to look at the complexities as we seek peace and de-escalation. The American flag, and we have an imbalance in our relationship with Russia. Our own freedom to act has been sacrificed to be firm, and we need to be unambiguous in our unity and our support for the people of Ukraine and our condemnation of this invasion. It is nonetheless dishonest for the EU institutions to make use of this to take a vision of federalism forward that the people of Europe reject. NATO, an expansion of the EU, won't help in any way. The priority is to stop the arms. Russia should not come back to face the kind of sanctions which have not helped. Undermining the purchasing power of the people who are already suffering doesn't help with the strategic autonomy, and the sanctions which have been in place since 2014 have been in this case. We should not carry on using methods which we condemn elsewhere in Europe. Mature democracies such as ours shouldn't be closing down media stations even if they're under foreign influence. It is also no point of fanning the flames of war. We need to seek peace and de-escalation, and we also need to return to a free, independent, respected France, which is able to operate in a balance in a multipolar world.
Frau Kollegin Anna Fotiga.
Anna Fotiga, the floor is yours.
Thank you, President. Resistance of Ukrainian people facing the unprecedented aggression of the Russian Federation. I really admire heroism of Ukrainian leadership. President Zelensky already finds his place in universal history. I admire heroism of commanders, soldiers, and in particular, ordinary people. You are invincible. Resisting aggression, you are the best part of us, the West. We are honored by your request to become a member of the European Union. We'll do our utmost to provide you candidacy status as soon as possible and immediately. On unprecedented rules, the membership, therefore, because we need you, and of course you need us. In this, I speak on behalf of entire ECR, Polish delegation. All of them fully support the resolution as negotiated by me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Mr. Pineda Mano.
Thank you, President. We condemn the Russian invasion of Ukraine. No nuances. Not 8 years since Donbass. We've seen impunity of the various assassinations by these gangs of Nazis. The Minsk agreements haven't been adhered to, but nothing can justify this attack. We're against war, and that's why we cannot support this resolution called peace and refers to an instrument of war, which is NATO. And the sanctions against the civil population, well, haven't helped anything. A fund to support peace cannot be used to buy weapons. We defend diplomacy. Politics as the only way of resolving the conflict. We defend the sending of humanitarian aid and opening the borders for those refugees. May wars be damned and the swines that support them. Thank you. Kostas Papadakis is next, please.
Of Russia combines with the condemnation of the war crimes of the US, NATO, Syria and Libya. The imperialist competition for spheres and influence and the natural resources led to the capitalist war, which is paid with human lives and poverty. All this 30 years after the capitalist restoration of the Soviet Union. That socialism made it for people to live in equity for decades. Now, armaments are paid by the people, and this leads to escalation of the imperialist war, with the deep intervention of Greece through NATO bases. Peoples do not choose sides. No intervention, no involvement in the war, no armies outside national borders, decoupling from the EU and NATO. People in power.
Thank you. Andrius Kubilius, you have the floor.
Dear brothers and sisters in Ukraine, dear colleagues, first of all, I would like to praise the heroism of Ukrainian people. I would like to praise the heroism of Ukrainian soldiers and the heroic leadership of President Vladimir Zelensky. Ukrainians are facing and defending themselves against the war launched by a real new Nazi regime in Kremlin. Putin is a real war criminal. Ukrainians are suffering because we in the West till now were too weak to stop Putin crimes from the very beginning. Ukrainians with their blood are fighting for their right to reunite with Europe. They are more Europeans than many of us. That is why we need to give them candidate status immediately, and then we need to design special fast procedure for Ukraine to join us. There is an example of such a special procedure when in 1990 Eastern Germany integrated into European Union, and it took less than 1 year. So let's establish a special procedure also for Ukraine's swift reunification with Europe. After EU started to deliver weapons to Ukraine, when SWIFT and other banking sanctions were introduced, we need next steps. First of all, we need to stop imports of Russian oil and gas immediately. Each day, we are paying to Putin for 100 new T-72 tanks. twice more than Ukrainians are able to destroy during one day on the battlefield. Second, let's create a multi-billion Free Ukraine Fund to support resilience, reconstruction and modernization of the Ukrainian economy. Let's finance it in the same way as we finance Next Generation EU Fund with EU borrowing in the markets. Thanks, Josep Borrell, for a good idea. Third, let's introduce full-scale SWIFT and other sanctions also against criminal Lukashenko and his banks. And the last point, stable peace on the European continent will be possible only if deputinization of Russia will happen. With the help of Ukrainian victories on the battlefields, with our sanctions, and with the help of ordinary Russians protesting on the streets, deputinization of Russia is coming closer and closer. Mr. Putin, you lost this criminal war. International Tribunal in Hague is waiting for you, for justice to be served. Justice, first of all, to Ukrainians. Razom do перемоги. Slava Ukraini.
Danke, Herr Kubilius.
Thank you, Mr. Kubilius. Mr. Sven Mikser, please.
Colleagues, I am proud at how strong and united we are today, but we have to be honest. We have been painfully slow and painfully late waking up to the true nature of Putin's Russia. I hope that today we finally truly understand the urgency and the existential nature of the current situation. If we do, it is imperative that we support Ukraine in every way possible without holding anything back. This includes lethal defensive equipment, economic and humanitarian aid, help to the refugees, and yes, also launching an honest and accession process for Ukraine to join our union. Regarding sanctions on Russia, for as long as the criminal ideology of Putinism remains in power in Russia, we have to go beyond punishing individuals and take the strategic decision of systemically weakening Russia's economy and industrial base. This is in our vital security interest. Yes, sanctions hit ordinary Russians too, and they are not our enemies. But let's admit it, it is primarily the responsibility of the Russian people to make sure that their mad Tsar cannot kill innocent people abroad. We should fully expect, and when possible, encourage the Russian people to take that responsibility seriously. Slava Ukraini.
Next we have Malik Asman.
Thank you, President. The courageous Ukrainian people are standing up to an evil act of aggression. Europe answers Ukraine's call for help. We rise up to defend those who are fighting for freedom and democracy. The EU is showing unity, and we are finally showing that we are not just a soft power. We are crippling Russia's economy, isolating Putin's regime, and reinforcing Ukraine's defense. But this is just the start, and we have to do more by excluding more Russian operators and banks from SWIFT, by blocking the Russian Central Bank's use of Western currencies. And we should even consider blocking Russian ships in our harbors, and more. Also, we have to increase our support for Ukraine's economy and defense with money and weapons. My message to the Ukrainian people: Europe stands with you. Slava Ukraini.
Danke.
Thank you very much. Mr. Yannick Jadot, please.
Monsieur le Président, chers collègues, en ce moment même, dans les rues, dans les maisons, les Ukrainiens défendent héroïquement la liberté, ils défendent leur démocratie, ils défendent leur intégrité territoriale. Ils sont pour l'Europe entière le front pour la sécurité, pour la paix et pour la démocratie sur notre continent. Alors oui, sanctionnons massivement Poutine et les oligarques et intégrons immédiatement la Biélorussie dans ces sanctions. Oui, bien sûr, soutenons militairement la résistance en Ukraine. Oui, reconnaissons le statut de candidat à l'Ukraine pour l'Union européenne. Oui, mettons au banc la Russie
and
de toute la communauté internationale et
Russia from the
lançons
entire
un grand
international
plan
community and
d'investissement
launch
pour
a
la
major
sécurité
investment
climatique et
plan for
énergétique,
climate and
pour
energy
faire des
security,
énergies renouvelables le
to
cœur,
create
parce que ce sont des énergies
renewable
de paix,
energies at the
et pour
heart
sortir
of
des
the plan,
dépendances
because they are the
énergétiques et des
energy of
complaisances
peace. And
politiques
let's get
qui
out of
tuent la
the
démocratie
political
et qui
complicity
tuent
that is
le
killing
climat.
democracy and
Alors
killing the
agissons
climate.
maintenant, soyons
Let's
fiers
act
de
now,
l'Europe,
let's be
aux
proud of
côtés de la
Europe,
résistance
alongside the
héroïque de
resistance, the
l'Ukraine.
heroic resistance of
Slava
Ukraine.
Vilnius, Ukrainia.
Slava
Merci.
Vilnius, Ukraine. Thank you.
You have the floor.
The
direction of the European nations, when the United States killed 200,000 civilians in Iraq under the pretext of weapons of mass destruction, where were you, Libya or Syria? Where was Europe when Ukrainian mercenaries were killing children in Donbass or were burning, teaching us that all wars are bad? All wars are bad, not condemn all wars. What's happening in Ukraine is horrible and it has to stop. It has to only because they are American. That's also hypocrisy. It's terrible.
Next.
Unser Kollege Arnaud Danjean.
Arnaud Danjean is the next speaker.
Chers collègues,
Colleagues, the events we've seen affecting all of the rules in such a brutal fashion against all rational thought. We've seen deliberate aggression, brutal aggression against a free, sovereign European nation. And Vladimir Putin is the only one to be blamed. By doing that, he underestimated what the Ukrainians could do. He underestimated how they felt about their independence. That's what all autocrats think. He underestimated the reactions from Europe. Ukrainian resistance is admirable, and it needs our 100% support. We're very happy that Europe has taken its responsibility, shouldered its responsibility, but this satisfaction, working in unity, that shouldn't affect our lucidity. This terrible war will last. The aggressor may actually win militarily, even though it has a lack of morality. Let's not forget either that given there is war in Europe, and we've had wars since 1945 in Europe, we've seen already that Europe believes that it's ready to deal with these wars. Since 1991, we saw a decade of terrible wars in the Balkans. Now we are moving to the Ukrainian theatre. It is protecting more than just its status as an independent state. It's trying to... We have to make sure that we maintain our strategic awakening. We have to deal with the situation that others are imposing on us. This is an existential threat. Thank you.
Merci, monsieur.
Thank you much indeed. Next, Mr. Benifei.
Thank you, President. There is no greatness where there is no truth. These are the words of Leo Tolstoy, as quoted by David Sassoli a few months ago, addressing Putin. And we need the truth again today to achieve peace. The truth of the Ukrainian people who've shown heroic resistance together with President Zelensky. The truth of a Europe which is finally fighting for its own political energy and defence, sovereignty, and which is not afraid to speak out and to make sacrifices, to speak with one voice to stop war and save human lives, because victims come first, dead Ukrainians come first, the refugees we have to welcome, and those brave Russians who are sick of this military folly also come first. All people should be free, including Ukraine, to make their own decisions, make their own choices, without others trying to take decisions on their behalf. So we give full support today to the defense of our own democracy on Ukrainian soil. But we should be even braver than that. We should be there. Our governments, the EU institutions should take things. Putin must stop. And then it will be all too clear to his own citizens, too, that both he and this inhuman war are mad. Long live free Ukraine. Long live free Europe.
Getter, please.
Vous avez perdu, Monsieur Poutine, le malheur, mais vous avez déjà perdu, car on ne reconstruit pas les hommes que vous rêvez tant, croyez-en toujours un Français. Vous avez perdu, Monsieur, jusqu'à sa juste victoire. Vous avez perdu car vous avez resserré comme jamais les rangs de notre Union qui prend ce jour même, ici même, les traits tant espérés d'une union politique. Vous avez perdu parce que votre peuple ne vous croit plus et n'admet pas que vous alliez, Monsieur Poutine. Vous êtes aussi une absolue nuisance pour votre pays lui-même que vous menez dans le mur contre son gré. Vive la paix, vive l'Ukraine, vive la liberté, Monsieur Poutine.
Bevor wir die Aussprache fortsetzen,
before continuing the results of the first round of voting from the understanding of that to the next speakers, so the results of the Russia's aggression against Ukraine, paragraph 1 adopted, paragraph 2 adopted, paragraph 3 amendment 4 rejected.
6, 22, 23 und 24 wurden abgelehnt.
22, 23, 24 rejected. Amendment 7 adopted. 2 rejected. Amendment 29 Part 3 adopted. Part 4 adopted. Amendment 8 adopted. Paragraph 16 fall. Paragraph 17 adopted. After paragraph 17, amendments 13, 14, 15, 16 and 17 rejected. Paragraph 18, part 1, part 2 adopted. Paragraph 19, amendment 9 rejected. 19, amendment 12 and 1925 adopted. On paragraph 19, parts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, they fall. Paragraph 20, part 1 adopted. Paragraph 20, part 2 adopted. 21, amendments on part 1, 2, 3, 4 adopted. Paragraph 22, part 1 and part 2 adopted. On 23, 1, 2 and 3 and amendment part 3 also adopted. On 24, 11 is adopted. On 24, part 1 and part 2 they fall. 25 adopted. 27 adopted. Paragraph 28, parts 1, 2, 3 adopted. Paragraph 29, parts 1 and 2 adopted. Paragraph 31, amendment 26 is rejected. On 31, part 1 and part 2 are adopted. 34, amendment 27 rejected. 34, part 1 and part 2 adopted. 35, parts 1, 2 and 3 adopted. Paragraph 36, amendments 19 and 18 are rejected. After 37, amendment 21 adopted. Paragraph 39 adopted. Paragraph 40, parts 1 and 2 adopted. After 43, amendment 10 adopted. After paragraph 44, Amendment 20, rejected. After paragraph 45, Amendment 28, adopted. Recital C, Part 1, 2, 3 and 4, adopted. After Recital D, Amendment 1, rejected. Amendment 2, adopted. After E, Amendment 3, rejected. Recital F, Part 1 and Part 2, adopted. Recital G, Parts 1 and 2, adopted. We shall now continue with our debate, and I'd like to ask our colleague Miroslav Radakovsky to come up to the lectern, please.
Also condemns the unjustified Russian invasion of Ukraine and calls for immediate stop of this aggression. Slovak Republic has offered the Russian and Ukrainian representatives as Bratislava for me with the new independent countries. So Slovakia does not also prove foreign troops. I believe that in the near future, others, Ukraine and Russia, and we will do everything to that it will be this way.
Mr. Halicki.
Szanowni Państwo, zabite dzieci, kobiety, zniszczone miasta, to ponura cena za otwarcie Europy. Oni walczą za nas, za wolność swoją, ale też za wartości, za wartości, w które wierzą. Demokrację, za wartości europejskie, nasze wartości. Walczą za nas, Polaków, za Litwinów,
They're fighting for us, for Polish people, for Lithuanians, for you, ladies and gentlemen, in Western Europe, for all Europe to be able to enjoy security. They need weapons, that's obvious. But we can give them a lot more than weapons. We can give them a guarantee that once, thanks to those weapons, they've reconquered their freedom, they can live in peace in our family, in this European family. And that should be happening as soon as possible. Without looking at the procedure, we will find a way of implementing that dream. But let's be careful as well. Let's not make mistakes. If we want to suspend Nord Stream 2, why not suspend Nord Stream 1? We need to cut the head off Mr. Putin's mafia. We need to make sure they have no revenue. They should be there in The Hague International Tribunal for war crimes. And we should put our hand out today to everybody dreaming of peace. That's the sort of Europe we want. Europe living united and in peace. And anybody against that is working for Putin. Didn't start yesterday, this war in Ukraine. In 2008, let me just remind you, Russia attacked Georgia and Moldova, Transnistria. Blood was shed then as well. So we have to be supporting those in Russia who are fighting for peace. For Mr. Navalny. Long live free and democratic Ukraine.
Thank you. Mr. Jenskaya, you are the next one.
Vielen Dank, Herr Präsident.
Thank you very much, President.
Ich bin dankbar für diese
I'm
Sondersitzung,
grateful
weil
for
sie die
this special
Gelegenheit
sitting because
gibt, zum
it
Ausdruck
provides
zu
an
bringen, was die
opportunity to
politische Nachricht
express
dieses Tages sein muss.
what the
Wir
political
verdammen den
message of the day must
Völkerrechtsbruch,
be. We
den Präsident
condemn
Putin mit
the
seinem
breach of
Angriffsbefehl
international law
auf ein friedliches Nachbarland, die
committed
Ukraine,
by
begangen hat. Deswegen werden die
Putin ordering the
Abgeordneten
invasion
der
of a
SPD in
peaceful
diesem
neighboring
Parlament die
country.
eingebrachte
And
Resolution
that's
umfänglich
the
unterstützen.
resolution that we
Bundeskanzler Scholz
tabled
hat
as
recht,
yesterday
das ist
and we
Putins
emphatically
Krieg.
support it.
Ihm und seiner
Scholz
Regierung gilt
is
unser
right, this is
Widerstand und unser
Putin's
Protest,
war,
nicht dem
and
russischen
we are
Volk.
protesting against
Unsere
him,
Gedanken
not the
sind heute
Russian
bei den
people.
Menschen in der
Our thoughts
Ukraine,
are
bei
with those
denen
people in
bei denen, die um ihre
Ukraine
Freiheit
now,
kämpfen, die
who
dabei
are
ums
fighting
Leben
for their
kommen
freedom,
und
who
die
are
flüchten,
losing
um
their
ihr Leben
lives,
zu retten.
and who are
Slava
fleeing to
Ukraine.
save their lives. Slava
Die EU
Ukraine.
und ihre
The
Institutionen
EU and its
haben in dieser
institutions
Gelegenheit
in
bewiesen, dass
this
sie ihrer Aufgabe gerecht werden
opportunity have
können
shown that they can
und eine nie
rise to
gesehene
the occasion,
Entschlossenheit und
and there
Handlungsfähigkeit
is
an den
an
Tag gelegt. Die
unprecedented
gemeinsame
resolve
Außenpolitik
that they
der EU,
have
sie funktioniert
demonstrated.
also,
The
wenn die
EU foreign
Mitgliedstaaten es
policy
nur wollen.
therefore
Die
works
Sanktionen
only
treffen
when
hart.
member states want
Viele
it. The
europäische
sanctions are hitting
PolitikerInnen
hard.
haben
Many
Putin
European
gewarnt,
Politicians warned Putin about how costly an attack on Ukraine would prove, and that is being borne out now. Support for the refugees is continuing, and we are showing solidarity with countries on the western border of Ukraine who are providing the first assistance. They are not standing alone. Our help for Ukraine and neighbouring countries requires us to develop our policies further. How do we create security in a multipolar world? That question is one asked of us brutally by President Putin. We must find an answer.
Danke, Herr Kollege.
Thank you, colleague.
Am Wort ist Frau Hilde Wautmann.
Speaker is Mrs. Hilde Valkmans.
Meneer de hoge vertegenwoordiger, collega's.
High Representative, colleagues.
Putin heeft het tegenovergestelde gekregen van wat hij wou.
Putin has got what he wanted. More NATO, more European unity, more Western determination. And he really wants a dirty war, Putin, against the West, and now is threatening with nuclear weapons. Everything is irrational. He's a warmonger. But let us not forget, colleagues, autocrats throughout the world are looking at what's happening, how we are going to protect our values. They're looking at our reaction today, and that will decide which world we live in tomorrow. 24th of February, the world changed. Let's make sure that in this crisis we see a new Europe born, a strong European defence, a strong European army to defend our values, where we work together from Ukraine. A Europe that is no longer dependent on the European Solidarity Fund for all Europeans who are affected by Putin's war. That is the Europe that we need now. Long.
Danke, Frau Kollegin.
Thank you. The next speaker is the chairman of the Foreign Policy Committee of this Parliament, Mr. David McAllister.
Mr. President, thank you. The Russian military aggression and invasion against Ukraine is illegal, it is unprovoked, it is unjustified. This is indeed a crucial and historical moment, the moment of truth, as Commission President Ursula von der Leyen pointed out. Too many times in the past, the international community has been blind in front of a wrong and a united message to the Kremlin that we stand with Ukraine from the different political groups who drafted and negotiated this resolution, and I call on colleagues to vote in favour. I fully underline the very good arguments we have heard today. I want to add one point. Let us also strongly condemn the involvement of Belarus in this aggression against Ukraine. It was during last week's interparliamentary conference on the CFSP and CSDP in Paris that Svetlana Tsikhanouska made it very clear that the assault on Ukraine wouldn't have been possible if dictator Lukashenko wouldn't have had provided Russia the land and the infrastructure. The Lukashenko regime has assisted and enabled this Russian aggression. For this reason, the EU should apply further appropriate sanctions also on Belarus. Dear colleagues, the world will hold Russia and Belarus accountable for their actions. Thank you.
Danke, Herr Kollege.
Thank you. And now Mrs. Kathleen van Bremt has the floor.
Thank you, Sharon. Dear colleagues, today we feel sadness, anger for sure, but also pride. Pride in the unity of the European response to Putin's war crimes. Could you imagine just for 1 second that we did not have the European Union today? Then we would be divided, and divided we cannot have any response to Putin. But united as we stand today, we have Ukraine's back. Mr. Zelensky, I know you have other things to do, but you know we have your back. We stand with you, we stand with your people in full solidarity in fight for peace, freedom and democracy. And it is clear Putin will only listen to clear messages. So we need to use this clear language. So therefore, I think it's important that we stop buying gas from Russia. We need to cut up from that gas. It's at a high price, but it is doable. And if we do not pay the price today, we will be presented with the price tomorrow. And President Zelensky was right. He said, this is the crisis of freedom and democracy. Well, dear colleagues in Europe, let's take this fight and stand up for our values. Thank you very much.
Merci, Madame. Herr Kollege
Thank you, Mr. Ilan Kyuchuk.
Thank you, dear President. Dear colleagues, we have a war in Europe on a scale and of a type we told belong to the history books. And let me be clear, this is not the war of Russian people. This is the Putin's war. Putin's regime is the one to blame for waging the war, killing civilians, destroying countries' infrastructure. Putin has attacked democratic values and European aspirations of the people of Ukraine. But the brave Ukrainians stood up strong, and they deserve fully-fledged support. Colleagues, it's time to be on the right side of history and to grant Ukraine with candidate status. Dear Ukrainians, we will not let you go. I'm sure that the white will win over the dark. We are with you, the brave people of Ukraine. Slava Ukraini.
Danke, Herr Muresan.
Thank you, Mr. Muresan.
Sie sind unser nächster Redner.
You are our next speaker.
Vielen Dank, Herr Präsident. Dear colleagues, now is the time for actions and clear words, so I will say 4 things very clearly. We can only live in safety and security within the borders of the 27 member states of the Union if we are surrounded by countries which are safe and stable in our neighbourhood. This provides all support that we can to Ukraine, including financial support, and here we, the European Parliament, have a big role to play. We say very clearly we are ready to spend money for defence, we are ready to spend more for democracy in Ukraine and everywhere else where needed as well. Secondly, when people in Ukraine say they want to join the European Union, our answer is yes, you are welcome. Ukraine belongs to Europe, Ukraine belongs to the European Union. This today we say with the very large majority of pro-European members of the European Parliament. We know there is still a lot to do until membership, many difficulties to overcome. But what proof do we need more than what the people of Ukraine are doing these days as a proof that the people of Ukraine can overcome all difficulties in view of becoming member of the European Union one day? We start work on this as soon as possible. Thirdly, the Republic of Moldova, a country of less than 3 million people, a neighbouring country of the European Union, has welcomed more than 70,000 refugees on their territory in the past 5 days. They provided food, they provided shelter, they provided support, they acted in European spirit on the basis of European values because they are led by a pro-European president and a pro-European government. This is why I say everything that we offer to Ukraine, we have to offer to the Republic of Moldova right now in terms of EU cooperation, in terms of perspective for membership. The Republic of Moldova and Ukraine are equally important for the security of Europe. And last thing, the invasion of Ukraine and the assault upon Kiev would not have been possible without Belarus. This is why all political measures that we apply upon Russia, we should apply in the same manner upon Belarus. Thank you very much.
Danke vielmals. Zu Wort gemeldet hat sich Herr Robert Biedron.
Mr. Robert Biedron.
Wojna wróciła do Europy. To wojna między dwoma światami, agresywnym i autorytarnym światem Putina, a drugim, gdzie chcemy pokoju i demokracji.
Authoritarian world and our world where we want peace and democracy.
A ukraińskie dzieci, mężczyźni i
It's a
kobiety,
war
bohaterami.
perpetrated by Putin. And the heroes of the war are the Ukrainians, men and women. It's not just about aggression against Ukraine, it's aggression against the whole of Europe, all of our dreams of peace and our peaceful ambitions. That's why today we should remember that Europe will never be at peace until Ukraine is at peace. Ukraine is part of Europe. It's a moment of hope for millions of Ukrainians who are placing that hope in the EU. We should be opening our doors wide for Ukraine before Putin closes his on them forever. I would ask every member here, every lover of democracy, to show their support for Ukraine. They're fighting for their freedom, ours and theirs. Slava Ukraini.
Zu Wort gemeldet hat sich Herr Czolosz Dacian.
Mr. Dacian Czolosz has the floor.
Cetățenii ucraineni au curaj să
The
țină piept
citizens of
unea dintre
Ukraine
cele
have
mai
the courage
mari
to stand
armate
up
din
to one
lume
of the
și
biggest
reușesc
armies in the
acest
world
lucru.
and successfully
Au
so.
curajul să lupte,
They have the courage to
dar să nu
fight,
renunțe la
but also
valorile
not to give
libertății,
up
care
on the
sunt și
values of
valorile
freedom,
Uniunii
which are also the
Europene.
values of the European
Este o
Union.
lecție
This is
pentru
a
orice
lesson for any
regim tiranic și
tyrannical
criminal
and criminal
care vrea să
regime
năbușe în
that
sânge și
wishes
sub
to
bombardamente
abuse
aspirațiile și
European
valorile
aspirations and
europene,
value, democracy and
democrația și
the freedom to
alegerea
choose one's future
viitorului în
with
libertate.
blood and
Dragi
bombing.
colegi,
But
această
colleagues,
lecție a
this
cetățenilor
lesson
ucraineni
for
este
the
și
citizens
pentru
of
noi,
Ukraine is
cei
also a
care am
lesson for us,
luat de-a gata
those who have
libertatea și pacea în
those who
ultimele
have taken
decenii.
hold of freedom and
Lecția noastră
peace in
este că
recent
trebuie să
decades.
avem
Our
determinare,
lesson is
curaj
that we must have
și
the
să
determination
deschidem
and
azi
courage
calea către
to
Uniunea Europeană
open today the
tuturor
path to our
europenilor
union
care
to
vor
all those Europeans
și care
who
cred
want
în
to
acest
join in
proiect.
this
Și să nu
project,
vă temeți,
to
așa
believe
cum
in
ei au
it.
putut ține
And
pieptul
fear not,
unei
just as they are
armate
standing
atât
up
de
to a
mari, așa
great
vor
army
avea
today,
puterea să-și
so
reconstruiască
they will have the
țara și
strength
să
to
fie
rebuild their
pregătiți
country
pentru
after
Uniunea
this
Europeană.
disaster.
Ucrainenii merită să fie în
The
Uniunea
Ukrainians
Europeană
deserve the
și
EU
Uniunea să le
opening the door
deschidă
wide for
larg
them.
ușile.
The
La
same
fel cum merită și moldovenii și
applies to
georgienii.
Moldovans
Comisia
and
a făcut
Georgians.
pași
The
curajoși și
Commission has
istorici în
taken
ultimele
courageous,
zile
historic
și
steps
așa
in
trebuie
recent days,
continuat.
and this should
Uniți
continue.
suntem puternici și
United, we
asta
are
se
a
vede
great
și prin
power, and this can
ajutorul
also be seen
dat de
through the help
cetățenii
given
români,
by the
polonezi,
citizens of Romania,
maghiari, slovaci și
Poland,
moldoveni,
Hungary, and
refugiaților
Moldova
din
and
calea
Slovakia
războiului.
to the refugees from the war.
Țările care și-au
The
deschis
countries that have
granițele
opened
pentru
their borders for
refugiați și au
refugees
nevoie
urgently
urgentă
need
de
our
sprijin, trebuie să
support,
fie ajutate.
and
Slava
that
Ucraina!
must come. Slava Ukraina.
Und das Wort hat unser früherer Präsident
Thank you.
und jetziger Vorsitzender des Verfassungsausschusses Antonio Tajani.
Previous President and current Chairman of the Constitutional Affairs Committee, Antonio Tajani.
Thank you, Mr. President. We are all Ukrainians. Tutta l'Europa, tutto l'Occidente.
The whole of Europe, the whole of the West. We're on the side of freedom and democracy. We will continue standing up against Russian aggressors and stand up with the strength of our own values. The cohesion and the resistance that we've seen from the Ukrainian people and the strong role of Europe have forced Russia to sit at the negotiating table. We all want peace. Let us hope that the negotiations will lead to attaining fundamental aims such as peace. But peace cannot mean colonization of a free country. Many citizens of Ukraine are fleeing war, and we need humanitarian corridors with a refugee reception plan. We also need to take account of the events of the last few days and respond by having a true foreign policy and a true common defence policy. We need Europe to be even stronger in order to defend our values. We also need energy self-sufficiency. We need a single market for energy. We need a single market for energy if we're really to avoid being held hostage by any third party. And we also need solidarity. We need to help families and businesses. They've been mobilizing enthusiastically in favor of sanctions and willing to pay that price. But we need to ensure that we're helping those brave business people and families. We need to help them over the next few months and years, because it is true that freedom and democracy do come at a price. The price of our commitment. But our commitment has no price. We need...
Ich erteile nun Frau Helene Fritzon.
Helene Fritzon.
Commissioner, High Representative, crying, children are crying, houses are collapsing. Putin's invasion can only be described as an invasion in cold blood without any regard for human suffering. The EU is more united than ever, and we are adopting the harshest sanctions in the history of the EU. President Zelensky, people of Ukraine must understand that the EU stands with them. We show solidarity. Putin will see that there is powerful, tangible action to stand up to him. The EU is speaking with one voice, once and for all, and this aggression against Ukraine must cease immediately. We must immediately step up to defend Ukraine and to defend the EU. The Swedish flag has the same beautiful colours as the flag of Ukraine, and we stand with the people of Ukraine.
Doamna președintă.
Thank you, Madam President.
Cu toții am văzut cum o agresiune nejustificată și neprovocată a Federației Ruse Ucraina a produs o catastrofă umanitară. Astăzi, când vă vorbesc, mii și zeci de mii de femei, copii, persoane în vârstă, încearcă să se salveze, iar punctele de trecere a frontierei sunt aglomerate cu acești oameni, aceste persoane care au dreptul la o viață, la o viață civilizată și au dreptul să supraviețuiască. Românii s-au mobilizat, guvern, autorități locale și mii și mii de cetățeni individuali care vin să le ce pot ei, mâncare, un adăpost. Situația este tragică. A fost ieri doamna comisariu Hasso și a văzut ce înseamnă o condiție absolut deplorabilă pe care au trebuit să o îndure acești oameni, nevoiți să-și părăsească casele. Și vreau să vă dau un singur exemplu. O femeie care a fost întrebată la trecerea frontierei care este averea ei. Avea în mână un copil mic, un copil nenăscut și un rucsac mic în spate. Soțul a rămas să-și apere țara. Aceasta este direcția noastră și din acest motiv trebuie să luptăm cu toții ca să dăm statutul de membru candidat Ucrainei, Moldovei, pentru că acești oameni merită respectul și merită sprijinul nostru. Mulțumesc.
Thank you, Mr. Nika. I give the floor next to Ms. Tanja Fajon for 1 minute.
Hvala. Spoštovani, nisem si predstavljala, da bom kadarkoli na tem odru pozivala ustavite vojno v Ukrajini. Ustaviti treba lastnike vojne, zatiralce svobode, pravne države, demokracije. Človekovih pravic, nacionalistični autokrati tudi v Evropi bodo rušili demokracije, dokler jih ne bomo ustavili.
And Russia's conduct is threatening the post-war arrangements and security of the entire Europe, also exploiting the war in Ukraine for political purposes and profit is a disgrace. Only unity and the swift response of Western democracies is giving us hope. We Slovenians still carry a vivid and painful memory of the bloody Balkan Wars, and we want peace. Therefore, there will be a large rally in Slovenia today for peace. We have to help those affected by war. I thank everybody who is selflessly collecting and distributing aid to the refugees and to all people in distress. Not only today, but always. Every war ends at a negotiating table. It's absurd that, therefore, bloodbath, destruction and suffering ever happened in the first place. We should do everything in our power that peace is achieved through the power of international law and words and not due to the argument of force.
I give the floor next to
Thank
Nils Ujakovs for 1 minute.
Distinguished Madam President, dear colleagues, I will speak Latvian today, but being myself an ethnic Russian, I would like to try to address Russians in Russia and in Europe as well. Šobrīd, kad Kremlis izteno zemisku un noziedzīgu karu pret Ukrainu, daudzie saka, ir kauns būt Krievam. Tā tas nav. Krievija tiek aizturēta tūkstošiem cilvēku, kas bezbailīgi piedalās protestācijās, pilsētu protestē pret karu.
But Russians are protesting. And in Europe, there are a lot of protests as well. And a lot of Russian speakers in Europe, they are taking part in these protests as well. Being Russian isn't a shame. But But it's difficult to justify what's happening in Kharkiv. We need to do more in Europe. We need to give the EU the chance to become an EU member as quickly as possible. And now in Russian.
Pilsoņi un prezidenti, ka jūs esat musē. Mēs esam pret Kremli, mēs esam pret Krievu cilvēkiem.
We are against the Kremlin, but we're not against the Russian people.
Thank you, Mr.
And it's important for us to say no to this criminal war in Ukraine.
Important debate for this House. I invite, on behalf of the Commission, Vice President Šefčovič to take the floor.
Madam President, Honourable High Representative, my dear colleague, Commissioner McGuinness, honourable members of the European Parliament, but first and foremost, dear Ukrainians, Szanowni Ukraińcy. I have to say that I never seen a debate in European Parliament charged with so much emotions, solidarity and a sense of common European belonging. As you know, we come from different countries, from different political families, but we are discussing today an attack against the most fundamental European values that we all share. And therefore, today, we are all Ukrainians. Сьогодні ми всі українці. Because the people of Ukraine are fighting for our values. They are fighting for our freedom, and they are fighting for everything we believe in. For Europe as we know it, for Europe as we treasure it. And we will need the same unity as we felt this afternoon in this House in the days, weeks and months ahead. It's clear that Kremlin has failed in its goal to crush Ukraine. It failed to break spirit of brave Ukrainians. It failed to divide or scare Europe. On the contrary, bravery and courage of all Ukrainians and calm and determined leadership of President Zelensky and his government energize not only Ukraine and Ukrainians, but the whole Europe, all democracies, and I believe every peace-loving human being in the world. Mr. President Zelensky, we have been working together to reform Ukraine. We have been working together on energy security, on energy independence. And we will be working together to build strong, democratic Ukraine. Mr. President, you ask us to do proof that we are with you. And I would like to respond to you, we are. We will make sure that the sanctions are vigorously applied, and not only on Russia, but also on Belarus. We will do our utmost to supply you with everything you need. And we will be with you to rebuild your beautiful country after your victory. Nobody in Europe can doubt today that the people that stand up so bravely for our European values belongs in our European family. And therefore, I want to reassure you that as we welcome your women and children in Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, Romania and other European countries, that in the same warm, receptive way, we will open our arms to Ukraine in our common house of peace, democracy and prosperity called Europe. Slava Ukraine.
Thank you very much, Vice President Šefčovič. And now, on behalf of the Council, I invite High Representative Borrell to take the floor.
Señora Presidenta, querido colega comisario, señoras y señores diputados.
President, Commissioner, members.
Rusia se sitúa después de la agresión a Ucrania
Following this aggression
en un punto de inflexión
in
de su
Ukraine,
etapa postsoviética.
Russia is reaching a crucial juncture in its post-Soviet existence.
Rusia ha puesto fin
Russia
a uno de los últimos
has
eslabones que quedaban en
come
su
to the
relación
end
con la Unión Europea.
of an era in its relations with the EU.
Eran los acuerdos de Minsk.
The Minsk
El presidente
agreements
Putin los ha liquidado.
are now a thing of the
Eran
past.
acuerdos imperfectos.
Putin has done away with them.
Desde
They
muchos puntos de
were
vista,
not perfect.
arrancados en un momento en el que
They
había que
arose
hacer
at
un
a
alto
point
fuego
in
anterior.
time when we needed a ceasefire in a
No
previous
obstante,
conflict.
estos acuerdos
Nonetheless,
consagraban
those
la integridad
agreements
territorial de Ucrania.
guaranteed Ukrainian territorial integrity,
Hoy ya imposible, marcaba
and
un
respect
hipotético camino
for those agreements, which is
hacia
now
una
inconceivable,
normalidad de
was
las
something that
relaciones
led us on a path towards a normalization of diplomatic relations between Russia and the EU.
Y esta referencia y esta posibilidad ahora ha desaparecido.
That is now inconceivable.
Por eso digo que Rusia se encuentra hoy en un punto de
And this is
inflexión
why I'm
en su
saying
trayectoria
that Russia has now reached a turning point in terms of its post-Soviet existence. This
solo puede concluir
awful
positivamente con un
conflict
regreso de Rusia
can
a las
only
normas y a los
lead
principios
to a positive
internacionales
outcome of a
básicos.
return of Russia to the fold of respect for fundamental principles. This is the opportunity which we have in the EU. We need to seize this opportunity to put forward mechanisms and treaties that will ensure that there are mechanisms in place for ensuring security, stronger mechanisms in place that will allow us to be very vigilant about their implementation. In the enthusiasm of a parliamentary session, one can forget that the path of dialogue, the path of speaking and listening to one another, is at the heart of what we do in Europe. We should not forget that. We are not a military body. We're not declaring war on anyone. We've actually turned our back on war as a solution, as a way to resolve conflict. What we're doing is standing alongside a victim of an aggression, and we are mobilizing all of our diplomatic resources in order to ensure that we can safeguard the security of Europe, but also in order to find a solution to the conflict. Because there are necessary and inevitable sanctions, yes, but above and beyond that, we need solutions. Sanctions will hit, and are indeed already hitting, the Russian economy. And Putin cannot claim ignorance of that. He had warnings. President von der Leyen, the President of Council, have said on numerous occasions that sanctions will impose a very high price, and that is now going to happen. The ruble has lost 40% of its value. Almost half of the currency reserves of Russia will be beyond reach with a significant impact on the economy. There's a threat of default. So taking a few banks out of SWIFT is child's play compared to this, because if you look at the figures, Russia had been preparing for some time to face a situation such as this, and it had been moving its dollar and euro reserves out into yuan, renminbi, and gold. So they're moving out of dollars and euros, less than 40% of their total reserves now. But 40% is still significant. 135 million in gold. But even if it's billions in gold, who's going to buy it? In order to sell it, you need a buyer. Sanctions are going to prevent the mobilization of these resources. So these financial measures are certainly unprecedented.
Financial measures will go in the direction of a potential default, which will have consequences for the whole financial system, for the global financial system. So don't minusvalorate the importance of what we have decided to do and what will follow. I want to stress that. And now we have to work diplomatically all over the world, reaching out all countries in order to build a state of the mind in order the aggressor being condemned. And on that, I can assure you, me as High Representative, all my colleagues, members of the Foreign Affairs Council, all our delegations, all our embassies will be strongly working in order to get a result on the vote in the General Assembly. This is the most important thing that we have to do right now. Because I repeat, this is an issue which belongs to the foreign and security policy, which is intergovernmental, and it's the member states who have to take the lead on this response and the diplomatic sphere. The second thing that has been discussing today, and is maybe the more important that many of us could believe, is our dependency from the gas. The President has been saying all the time, we have to reduce this dependency. But I've been listening for the last 20 years that we have to decrease this dependency, and this dependency has been increasing during the last 20 years. So from now on, let's work in accordance with our saying, because we pay $700 million for the world for gas and oil and coal imports from Russia. And every year we import 200 billion cubic meters of gas. We have to increase renewables, President said, have renewed hydrogen, but keep in mind that the amount of power in a country like Italy a year in renewables is less than 500 million cubic meters. So we have in front of us a strong work to do. And we have to remain committed to it. And we have to explain to our people what does it mean. This is a good occasion to develop the best and most noble side of the political activity, which is pedagogy. That's the moment to do pedagogy. And I understand the enthusiasm and the approach of a parliamentarian chamber in a moment like this. I've been parliamentarian as you many years, even president of this House. And I know that this is the moment to show enthusiasm and support. But then we have to go to act. And next time, when you discuss again the budget of the European Union, remember that we need resources for do what today we are doing with because it's not in your competences. Put more defense and security on your mindset. Stop discussing theology about strategic autonomy. Call it the way you want, but we have to be more responsible. We have to take our responsibility more in our hands. We have to be strategically responsible. And this has nothing to do against weakening the transatlantic alliances, which, by the way, have been proven to be stronger than ever. And our unity with the transatlantic partners has been 100%. Nothing against weakening NATO, because we develop our capacities. We have to become a hard power. I know that the words may afraid someone, but hard power, I insist, is not just talking about military. Hard power is having a power to coerce, the power to influence the decisions of the others. And what we are doing on these measures is a lot of hard power. Be prepared for the answer. Be prepared for the consequences. Don't put all your strength in your mouth. Don't say nice things only. From now on, we have to be prepared to resist. We have to be prepared to act in the long term with a clear understanding of which are our challenges and our capacities. This is the moment for the European Union to discuss about what do we want to be, what we are, which are the limits of what we can do, and what do we want to do in the future. And in order to face the challenge of the future, there is a lot of things that we have to review, a lot of things about our procedures, our methods, putting more attention on our capacity to act than in the time that we spend on internal discussions. What's happening today in Ukraine, remember me, Budapest in '56. I was 9 years old, but I remember listening to the radio how the Russian chars were entering in Budapest. Would remember me, '88, the Prague Spring. I was an officer in the Spanish army then, and my unit was put into alert. I don't know why, but it was completely useless. On both cases, we did nothing, because we couldn't know anything. But from now on, we have to face a confrontation between us, democracies, people who believe on freedom, on multi-party system, where citizens choose their governments. When we live in a free market economy, trying to put together economic efficiency and social cohesion with the autocratic regimes, which are supporting themselves with a clique of people who take advantage of the system, while the great majority of the people don't improve their living conditions. All the war treasury that Putin is taking from our gas payments doesn't go to increase the well-being of the Russian people. It goes to make more powerful his war machine. Tout l'argent qu'on paye pour le gaz et le pétrole russe.
Everything which is being spent on Russian gas and other goods are not helping the people of Russia. That's just going into military expenditure by Russia. And I think very honestly that the time has come for Europe to think of itself. What do we actually want for the future? What do we want to be in the future? And I think we want to be something more than what we are now. That is the true challenge which we will have to face over the next few weeks, months and years, and that is why the Conference on the Future of Europe can play a very important role. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, High Representative. That concludes the debate. The vote is already open and will be open until 4:15, and I now invite all the colleagues. There are as many people in the Esplanade waiting for us to address them. Looking forward to that. Thank you very much.